Hello, my name is Kindson Munonye, and thank you very much for joining me as we begin to examine project scope management. But this time we are looking at collect requirement. Collect requirement is the second process on the project scope management, and previously on the project scope management we looked at plan scope management that defines the procedure to follow or the guidelines and how scope will be defined and controlled, validated, what is in scope and what is out of scope. Okay, let's now say collect requirements. Collect requirements is a process of determining, documenting and managing stakeholder needs and requirements to meet project objectives. The key benefit is that it provides the basis for defining and managing the project scope, including the product scope. Alright, requirements include conditions or capabilities that are to be met by the project or present in the product, service or result to satisfy an agreement or other formally imposed specification. Requirements include the quantified and documented needs and expectations of the sponsor, customer and other stakeholders. Requirements become the foundation of the work breakdown structure. The development of requirements begins with an analysis of the information contained in the project charter, the stakeholder register and the stakeholder management plan. Requirements are classified as into the following: business requirement describing high-level needs of the organization as a whole, business needs and issues, reason why the project has been undertaken. Then we have stakeholder requirements, the needs of stakeholders, solution requirements describing features, functions and characteristics of the product, service or result. The solution requirement can also be grouped into functional and non-functional requirement. Functional requirements describe the behavior of the product. Examples include processes, data, interactions with the product. Interactions with the product, etc. Non-functional are requirements that has to do with the environmental conditions or qualities required for the product to be effective. For instance, reliability, security, performance, etc. Alright. We have discussed business requirements, we've discussed stakeholder requirements, we've also discussed solution requirements. Now, further requirements can be classified as transition requirements describing temporary capabilities such as data conversion and training requirements. Then we have project requirements describing the actions, processes or other conditions the project needs to meet. Then we have quality requirements which capture any condition or criteria needed to validate the successful completion of a project deliverable to fulfill the project's objectives. The collect requirement process have quite a lot of tools and techniques. The inputs to it is project charter, also stakeholder register, scope management plan and requirements management plan and stakeholder management plan. These are the various inputs to collect requirement. But there are a whole lot of tools and techniques including interviews, focus groups, benchmarking, group creativity techniques, facilitated workshops, group decision-making techniques, questionnaires and surveys, observations, prototypes, context diagrams, document analysis, and we have two outputs from collect requirements, and they are requirements documentation and requirement traceability matrix. Let's now zoom into these items to see how they really apply or what they can be used for in collect requirement. We have the scope management plan, provides clarity on how the team will determine which type of requirements need to be collected. Requirement management plan is an output of the plan scope management and provides the processes that will be used throughout the collect requirements process to define and document stakeholder needs. we also need stakeholder management plan used to understand the stakeholder communication requirements and the level of stakeholder engagement in order to assess and adapt to the level of stakeholder participation in requirement activities. We do need the project charter to provide high-level description of the product or service. We also need stakeholder register to give us list of all the stakeholders and their expectations. Let's now take a look at all the tools and techniques for collect requirements process. The first one is interviews. This is a word that is very familiar. It's simply you sit down with someone, ask him questions and document his answers, and then use it to handle the planning of your project. So it means that interview can be formal, a prearranged interview, and it can be also informal. The focus of the purpose of interview is to elicit information from stakeholders by talking to them directly. Interviews are typically performed by asking prepared or spontaneous questions and recording the response. So when you interview experienced project stakeholders and subject matter experts, it helps you to understand the features and functions of the deliverables. And of course, we move to the second tool and techniques, and that is focus groups. Focus groups bring together pre-qualified stakeholders and subject matter experts to learn about their expectations and attitudes about a proposed product, service, or result. Bear in mind that in a focus group, a trained moderator guides the group through an interactive discussion designed to be more conversational than one-on-one interview. Let's now look at another tool and technique, and that is facilitated workshops. Facilitated workshops, just like the name is, a workshop focused on bringing key stakeholders together to define product requirements. Workshops are considered a primary technique for quickly defining cross-functional requirements and reconciling stakeholder differences. Workshop can help to build trust, can also help to foster relationship and improve communication among the participants, and this can as well lead to stakeholder consensus. So we've discussed 3 tools and techniques: interviews, focus groups, and facilitated workshops. Facilitated workshops. Okay, let's continue on it. A type of facilitated workshop, or an example of facilitated workshop, is the JAD, Joint Application Development. JAD. This is used in software development where the experts come together to discuss the development process. Another example of facilitated workshop is the one used in manufacturing industry called quality function deployment. It helps to determine critical characteristics for new product development. The quality function deployment starts by collecting customer needs, also known as voice of the customer, VOC. These needs are then objectively sorted, prioritized, and goals are set for achieving them. User stories, which are short textual description of required functionality, are often developed during a requirement workshop. User stories describe the stakeholder who benefits from the feature, what the stakeholder needs to accomplish, and the benefits to the stakeholder. User stories are applied mostly in agile methods. Another important tool and technique added to the 3 we've discussed is group creativity techniques. Can you remember the 3 we've discussed? We've discussed interviews, focus groups, and facilitated workshops, and now we are looking at group creativity techniques. Group creativity techniques are activities that are used to identify project requirements. Some of them are brainstorming. Brainstorming is used to generating ideas about product or project requirements. And then nominal group techniques enables brainstorming enhances brainstorming with a voting process used to rank the most useful ideas for further brainstorming or for prioritization. Okay, further group creativity techniques include idea or mind mapping, in which ideas are created through individual brainstorming sessions and then consolidated into a single map to reflect commonality and differences in understanding and to generate new ideas. We also have affinity diagrams, also one of the group creativity techniques. It allows large number of ideas to be classified into groups for review and analysis. Of course, we have multi-criteria decision analysis. This technique utilizes a decision matrix to provide a systematic analytical approach for establishing criteria such as risk level, uncertainty, and valuation to evaluate and rank many ideas. We are now moving to the fifth tool and technique used to collect requirements. Can you remember the four we've discussed? We discussed interviews, focus groups, facilitated workshops, and nominal group creativity techniques. Okay, so let's now discuss group decision making technique. Is an assessment process having multiple alternatives with an expected outcome in form of future action. So there are various methods to reach group decision making, such as unanimity, plurality, majority, and dictatorship. And these are explained here. Unanimity is where everyone agrees on a single course of action. One way to reach unanimity is Delphi technique, in which a selected group of experts answers questionnaires and provides feedback regarding the responses from each round of requirement gathering. Majority reached with support from over 50% of the members of the group. Plurality reached by largest block in the group decides. And dictatorship, just one single individual makes the decision for the group. There are these two other tools and techniques used in collect requirements. We have questionnaires and surveys, and we have observations. Maybe you spend some time looking through this because I'm not going to read through. Alright, can you remember the five we've discussed, the five tools and techniques for collect requirements? We discussed interviews, we discussed focus groups, facilitated workshops, group creativity techniques, and then we have group decision making techniques. We also have about observation. Observation is also known as job shadowing. Another name for observation is called job shadowing. It's done externally by an observer viewing a business expert performing a job. So when it comes to observation, somebody from the external to the project observes an expert on the job. It can also be done by a participant observer who actually performs a process or procedure to experience how it is done and to uncover hidden requirements. Another important tool and technique for collect requirements is prototyping. Prototyping is a method of obtaining early feedback on requirements by providing a working model of the expected product before actually building it. So if you want to build a new design of a car, you might build a prototype, let's say looking like a toy car. Let's say, because it's not functional, just is a prototype that represents what you're about to do. So it's a tangible thing you can present. You can showcase it to the stakeholders, allow them to see what the real outcome will be. So this prototype is building a model. So this can help to also help the stakeholders see what you're about to do, and they help them give their own requirement. Storyboarding is a prototyping technique showing sequence of navigation through a series of images or illustrations. Benchmarking is another tool and techniques used in collect requirement. It involves comparing actual or planned practices, such as processes and operations, to those of comparable organizations to identify best practices, generate ideas for improvement, and provide a basis for measuring performance. So the organization compared benchmarking. During benchmarking can be external or internal. So what it means, let's say you want to build a chair, okay, a special kind of chair, and now you go to a different place where this chair is existing, and you have may not be exactly the same with the one you are building, but you are trying to compare the one you have with this one that is already the one you are building, okay, the one you are working on in the project. You are comparing it with this existing one. So this is called benchmarking, comparing the actual or the planned practices to those of comparable organization. So that's benchmarking. So can we review all the tools and techniques we've mentioned so far? We started with interviewing, focus group, then we discussed facilitated workshops, group creativity techniques, group decision making techniques, observation, interview, questionnaires, prototypes. Now we discuss benchmarking. Let's look at further tool and techniques, and that is context diagram. It's an example of a scope model. Context diagram visually depicts the product scope by showing a business system and how people and other systems interact with it. Context diagrams show input to business system, the actors providing the input, the outputs from the business system, and the actors receiving the outputs. Document analysis is used to elicit requirements by analyzing existing documentation and identifying information relevant to the requirements. So let's look at some documents that may be analyzed. They include the business plan, marketing literature, agreements, procurement documents like requests for proposals, current process flows, logical data models, etc., etc. As I've listed them there, spend some time to understand that document analysis means analyzing this document to help you understand requirements for the project at hand. Okay, so now let's look at the outputs of the collect requirement process, and one of them is requirements documentation. Requirements documentation describe how individual requirements meet business need for the project. Requirements may start out as a high level and become progressively more detailed as more about the requirements is known. Before being baselined, requirements need to be unambiguous, traceable, complete, consistent, and acceptable to all key stakeholders. So before you document requirements and before you provide a completed documentation of requirements signed and accepted and to be used, it has to meet up these attributes. It has to be unambiguous, complete, consistent, acceptable, and traceable. Take note that the format of a requirement document may range from a simple document listing all the requirements categorized by stakeholder and priority to a more elaborate form containing an executive summary, detailed description, and attachments. Components of requirement document can include business requirements, as I've listed them there. You spend some time trying to get used to it. Stakeholder requirements, solution requirements, project requirements, transition requirements, and requirement assumptions, and so on. Another output of this process of collect requirements is the requirement traceability matrix, and this is a grid that links product requirements from their origin to the deliverables that satisfy them. The implementation of a requirement traceability matrix helps ensure that each requirement adds business value by linking it to the business and the project objectives. So requirement traceability matrix provides a means to track requirements throughout the project lifecycle, helping to ensure that the requirements approved in the requirements documentation are delivered at the end of the project, and it provides a structure for managing changes to the product scope. Tracing includes tracing requirements for business needs, project objectives, project scope, product design, etc., etc. As I've listed there, spend some time getting used to this requirement tracing. So I've given an example of requirements traceability matrix provided in the pinball guide. So here you have name of a project. So you have the name of the project here. Let's say whatever. Okay, let's just say the name of the project. Okay, I don't know exactly but there is the project name, the cost center. It can be 8, whatever. It may be a number or some kind of code. Then the description, a short description of the project. Now you have requirements traceability matrix. So you have defined the described requirement, specify the business need, the objective, deliverable that satisfied, and so on and so forth. And so this is how the requirements traceability matrix looks like. So with this discussion of the requirements traceability matrix, which is an output of the collect requirement process in addition to the requirements documentation, we are wrapping it up on collect requirement process. It has been an exhaustive discussion, and I hope you've learned much from this, but if necessary, rewind the video, pause at some point to spend some time reading through and trying to understand my explanations. As usual, I'm going to take you back to the ITTO's page so that you get used to these input tools and techniques and exactly how they apply. It will help you get a clear understanding of this process in itself. I'd like to thank you very much for joining me, and please join me in my next presentation as we are going to start discussion of the next process online, and that will be define scope.